The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com. The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. A very good morning to you. With the news at this time, I'm Ron Robinson. The Alliance for Change believes that the opposition should sit on the board of the National Natural Resource Fund, although it does not agree with the new legislation governing the oil money. The President says the local content law is not aimed at shutting out investors. Regionally, Trinidad and Tobago wants an independent investigation into the Coast Guard's shooting death of a Venezuelan toddler in a boat. The British Virgin Islands Labour Commissioner does not like the idea of multi-year work permits. And internationally, Canadian police have arrested several persons and seized several guns in connection with an anti-vaxxer protest. Those and the international news in a moment.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now the news in detail. The Alliance for Change, AFC, says it is keen on nominating an expert to be a member of the board of the Natural Resource Fund, NRF, to scrutinize spending of the oil money. The AFC and its coalition partner, a Partnership for National Unity, APNU, still maintain that the new NRF Act is badly structured and was rammed through the House despite calls for consultation with the opposition and civil society. But AFC leader Kemraj Ramjitan says it is important that the opposition makes an effort to nominate a competent and independent person to sit on the board to see how the oil money is spent.
Good politicians that like good governance will then realize that although we oppose the act, it doesn't necessarily mean that the contents of the act cannot be as best as possible be fulfilled. And so although we have been in opposition and very vociferous opposition against this new act of 2021, that does not necessarily mean that if all things being equal, as you said, we are given an opportunity to nominate a competent, capable person, we will not do that. I think it will be bad politics on our part, and it will be not in the exercise of your right to go towards good governance.
AFC General Secretary David Patterson and Executive Member Cathy Hughes says, they say it is important to see how the more than $600 million that has been withdrawn from that Natural Resource Fund will be spent.
The AFC is not willing to give up the very important role of scrutinizing how Guyana's monies are spent. We have a responsibility to ensure we can scrutinize, regardless of the way we may be treated or how we come to the table. But primarily, we have to make sure that that money is put to good use because it belongs to each and every Guyanese.
AFC Executive Member Cathy Hughes. The Alliance for Change wants the bipartisan Parliamentary Constitutional Reform Committee to discuss the possibility of power sharing. AFC leader Kemraj Ramjitan also wants the issue to be discussed among political parties and other stakeholders. He says that the APNU plus AFC administration had sought to involve non-governmental actors in national decision-making through the Natural Resource Fund Act.
It should go in both areas, and as a matter of fact, even stakeholder consultations all across. And that is one of the reasons why in our act, we put in 22 civilians to be the Transparency and Oversight Committee. Because in Guyana, a lot of civil society shy away from governance. And this was now a brand new fund that was going to be 10 times more than one revenue stream and so on will bring in about 5 years, the regular taxation and so on. And we wanted them to have a big handle on it, not this 5-man committee, 4 of which will be appointed by the president. We wanted to bring in the civil society to ensure that they have this oversight and lots more than the oversight, because we feel that that is a form of power sharing.
He made known his position in the wake of a democracy and governance assessment prepared for the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, saying that Guyana's 2 major political parties need to engage in power sharing. The 2021 assessment says the People's Progressive Party and the Partnership for National Unity need to move away from the current winner-take-all system. The USAID-funded report states that power sharing will ensure that the unprecedented wealth in oil reserves can be transparently and equitably managed for the benefit of all Guyanese. According to the assessment, the National Assembly, a possible mechanism for initiating reform discussions and formalizing power sharing, has been combative at best. President Irfan Ali is assuring foreign investors that Guyana's local content legislation is not aimed at shutting out foreign investors. He was Monday morning addressing the opening of Baker Hughes' office at Land of Canaan, East Bank, Demerara.
The local content legislation is not meant in any way to displace anyone. It is not meant in any way to lock out any investor. It is not meant in any way to minimize foreign direct investment. It is not meant in any way to minimize global investment and footprint in Guyana. To do so will be foolish. To do so will be working in isolation of what the rest of the world is.
The President's assurance has come against the backdrop of concerns by the Caribbean Private Sector Organization and some extra-regional companies that the local content legislation is protectionist. The Guyana Water Incorporated, GWI, says it is examining possible sites to construct a water treatment plant on Leguan, an island in the Essequibo River. The utility company says the new plant will be one of 5 along the coast to be constructed by GWI with funding from the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB. Neighbourhood Democratic Council Chairman Lachman Dworka, as well as Leguan's Regional Democratic Council representative Sheikh Ayub, both welcomed the construction of the plant. The officials praised GWI and, by extension, the Guyana government for bringing treated water to Wakenham. They took the opportunity to also highlight that the island's water pressure is excellent. And we now take a look at regional news. Trinidad and Tobago's opposition United National Congress, UNC, wants an independent investigation into the Coast Guard's shooting death of a Venezuelan toddler. The incident occurred earlier this month in Trinidad and Tobago waters. The Coast Guard says it was forced to open fire after the captain refused to stop and instead attempted to ram the Coast Guard vessel. The illegal boat was transporting a number of Venezuelans from Venezuela to Trinidad when the incident occurred. More in this report from CNC3 News.
The Prime Minister has made a few public statements on the Coast Guard's actions following the 1-year-old's death, with the Prime Minister saying the Coast Guard were merely protecting themselves and the country, and that the child's death was an accident.
Is that a fact? Do we know that? How do we know that?
Senator Roberts says the Prime Minister is making definitive statements while an investigation is being done. That investigation is being spearheaded by the Coast Guard. But the UNC has very little confidence in that.
Really? The Coast Guard is going to investigate the Coast Guard?
The UNC believes this reeks of a cover-up and says the action of the state to return the other Venezuelan nationals on the boat proves that.
How can you have an investigation without eyewitness accounts? You are sending a mountain of evidence back to Venezuela?
It's why the senator wants an independent investigation. He said the world is now looking at how Trinidad and Tobago treats with this matter, And while the Prime Minister sounds certain of the events, the UNC is seeing some inconsistencies. For example, was the Coast Guard's thermal imaging system used at the time?
You would have also seen Elvis, a little baby, would have given a tiny thermal image.
And the party wants to know why a Coast Guard vessel felt threatened by a pirogue, even if it was trying to ram them, as they say.
They were in a military-grade light craft, so therefore, to be rammed, these boats are designed to be rammed.
Now, the Coast Guard addressed that on February 6th, saying that the vessel they were in at the time was smaller than the Venezuelan's pirogue. Meanwhile, Senator Roberts wants the Prime Minister to know that what happened is a big deal, and that should be his focus right now, instead of the opposition leader.
Suriname is set to get another tranche of money from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. The IMF and the Surinamese government have reached a staff-level agreement on the first evaluation of the Economic Recovery Programme. Star News reports that the deal has yet to be approved by the IMF's Board of Directors. Finance and Planning Minister Armand Achai Bersing says that he is not afraid of the outcome of the evaluation. IMF board approval means a second tranche of the $690 million loan will be made available in March. In December, the first tranche of $56.4 million was deposited into the account of the Central Bank of Suriname. In a statement, the IMF said Suriname's economic program remains on track, meeting key quantitative targets and making continued progress on an ambitious set of reforms. The IMF says economic stabilization and recovery are underway, and both fiscal and external balances are improving. The government's economic policy aims to build on its fiscal consolidation efforts while increasing social spending and promoting debt restructuring talks with creditors. The IMF says the policy also seeks to strengthen the new monetary policy framework, addressing the vulnerabilities of the banking sector, and to further address money laundering, corruption, and other governance shortcomings. In Barbados, the Hotel and Tourism Association is welcoming the end of the COVID curfew as well as an ease in other restrictions. The government in Bridgetown says the decisions have been made based purely on the science of the virus. We have more in this report from Barbados Today.
Government is getting the thumbs up for its decision to lift the curfew and ease restrictions starting today. At the weekend, Health Minister Ian Gooding-Edgell announced that pleasure craft boats and party cruises will be allowed to operate. Hikes will resume, and there will be no restriction on beach activities and parks, among other things. Chairman of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Renee Copping, says direct tourism service providers, including catamarans, nightclubs, and tour companies, are delighted to be able to return to full capacity. And restaurants are also happy with the move so that they can extend their hours of operation. Meanwhile, the head of the COVID-19 monitoring unit, Ronald Chapman, has assured the public that the unit will continue to ensure a safe environment for all. At a weekend COVID-19 press conference update, Chapman urged Barbadians to act wisely and to use good judgment to keep COVID-19 cases low and to ensure a further reduction in restrictions.
We will continue to move deliberately. We will continue to move slowly, incrementally, to ensure that we reduce the level of, that we increase the freedoms or reduce the level of restrictions while ensuring a safe environment. We all welcome these eases. We all welcome a gradual return to the norm. And as we continue as a people to follow the protocols, to act wisely, and as the Prime Minister would say, to lend our hearts to wisdom, we will see a further falling of the cases, and we will also see further reduction of the restrictions.
Meanwhile, Chief Medical Officer, the Most Honorable Kenneth George, reported a 19% reduction in new COVID-19 infections over the last week in comparison with the last 7-day period.
The British Virgin Islands Labour Commissioner, Michelle McLean, has suggested that multi-year work permits for foreign workers may put locals at a disadvantage in the workforce. While acknowledging in a recent virtual stakeholders meeting that there are provisions currently in the Labour Code to implement 3-year work permits, McLean was hesitant about using this as an across-the-board measure to alleviate the significant backlog faced by her department. BVI News reports that the Labour Commissioner says a foreigner may be granted a 3-year work permit, but a BVI national may want to return home but will not be able to get a specific job being held by a foreigner on a work permit. McLean told stakeholders that she felt there couldn't be a blanket approach to addressing the particular challenge of processing work permits quickly. She said a clause may need to be implemented to somehow push the Labour Department to process permits in a workable time frame. Meanwhile, Labour Minister Vincent Wheatley said he was in agreement with the Labour Commissioner on the matter and shared her concerns. The Labour Department has come in for considerable flack over the last few months for months-long delays in renewing work permits and approving new ones. A new system that allows for online work permit applications to be processed has been riddled with challenges since its implementation. This has been cited as the main reason for the backlog. The Labour Commissioner also argued that the new system required duplication of efforts on the part of an already severely short-staffed department. And now for international news, we join the BBC World Service.
Hello, this is Jerry Smith. The men's world number 1 tennis player Novak Djokovic has said he's willing to miss the French Open and Wimbledon if that's the price for refusing to get a COVID jab. The Serbian was deported from Australia last month because he wasn't vaccinated, losing the chance to defend his Australian Open title. Amal Rajan has more.
When Novak Djokovic tried to enter Australia in January, he sparked an international outcry and became a hero to the global anti-vax movement. But he is explicit that he is not one of them.
I say that everyone has the right to choose to act or say whatever they feel is appropriate for them. And I have never said that I'm part of that movement.
He insisted that he played by the rules when he was given a medical exemption to compete in Australia. But he adds that if the price of his sticking to his principles is that he misses the French Open or Wimbledon, then so be it.
The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is said to meet President Putin in Moscow later as part of diplomatic efforts to try to ward off a potential Russian invasion of Ukraine. From Moscow, here's Caroline Davis.
A string of Western politicians have passed through Moscow over the course of the last few weeks, attempting to persuade President Putin to de-escalate the situation at Ukraine's border. Chancellor Scholz has said that he will push home the message that Russia will be hit with sanctions if it invades Ukraine, although he's not vowed to end Nord Stream 2, the gas pipeline project that would double the amount of natural gas flowing from Russia to Germany. Russia continues to deny it has any intention of invading Ukraine. Yesterday, during a televised meeting, President Putin asked his Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov if there was a chance that Russia could reach agreement with the West on its security demands. Mr. Lavrov said that there was, but the negotiations should not continue indefinitely.
The owner of an Islamic boarding school in Indonesia has been sentenced to life in prison for the rape of 13 pupils. The case has shocked the country since it emerged last year. Will Leonardo reports.
The abuse by Hendi Wirawan at his religious school in West Java came to light last year when the family of one of his students realised she was pregnant and reported him to the police. That exposed 5 years of sexual assault by the Quranic teacher of girls aged between 11 and 16. 9 children were born to the victims. 1 gave birth twice. The court heard how he'd confiscated his students' mobile phones and only allowed home visits once a year. The case has caused outrage in Indonesia, where nearly 5 million children study at religious boarding schools.
Police in the Honduran capital have surrounded the house of the former president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, hours after the United States requested his extradition. Mr. Hernandez is accused of having been involved in a drug trafficking ring, which included his brother, who was recently sentenced in the US to life in prison. World News from the BBC. The jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has appeared in court on the first day of a new trial where he's facing fraud charges. The trial is being held inside the maximum security prison where Mr. Navalny is serving a 2.5-year sentence. He was convicted in August 2020 of violating his parole conditions after being airlifted to Berlin, where he was treated for Novichok poisoning. One Syrian soldier has been killed and at least 11 others wounded in an explosion on a military bus in Damascus. The blast occurred at a roundabout in the Syrian capital. Some reports suggest the explosive device had been attached to the vehicle. The Prime Minister of the Pacific Island state of Tonga has said that last month's volcanic eruption and tsunami have lowered economic growth by more than 18%. Siausi Sovaleni described the disaster as a big hit to the island's economy.
The damages is about 18.5% of our GDP. That's a big hit. So we need to actually relook at it, not in just terms of getting more loan, but actually what can we do locally with the assistance that we receive to actually start a process of recovery, where we're looking not just at fisheries, but also agriculture and other sectors that actually help contribute to our economy.
Canada has won gold in the women's team pursuit speed skating on day 11 of the Beijing Winter Olympics, after Japan's Miho Tagaki crashed on the final corner. In the men's biathlon relay, the Russians threw away their lead in the closing stages to hand Norway a dramatic win. Switzerland secured 2 golds in the women's downhill and the free ski slopestyle. And in snowboarding, big airs discipline, Anna Gasser from Austria took gold in the women's competition, with Su Yiming of China victorious in the men's. And that's the latest BBC News.
That's the news to the moment.
BBC News. Hello.
Now to end the news, a look at the lead stories once again. The Alliance for Change believes that the opposition should sit on the board of the Natural Resource Fund, although it does not agree with the new legislation governing the oil money. The President says the local content law is not aimed at shutting out investors. Regionally, Trinidad and Tobago wants an independent investigation into the Coast Guard shooting death of a Venezuelan toddler in a boat. And the British Virgin Islands Labour Commissioner does not like the idea of multi-year work permits.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.